When I was in elementary school, we had a program called Conflict Management where kids could volunteer as conflict managers to help resolve issues between fellow students that arose on the playground, in the classroom, or anytime during school hours. If two classmates were arguing over something or there was just a disagreement, teachers would send students to the equipment room by the gym, and the three students would talk about the problem, and the conflict manager would try to suggest ways that the problem could be solved so that both kids would be happy or at least not upset, and the teacher could get back to more important things. As soon as I heard about this program and the free hat that they gave us, I knew it was something that I had to be a part of. I like to think it was because I wanted to help people and not because I was nosy, but either way, I loved it. Fast forward 25 years later, and here I am, a week away from completing my master's in mediation to be a family and divorce mediator, the same premise as a conflict manager, if you ask me. The difference is I didn't need a master's degree, liability insurance, and 2 40-hour certifications to be a conflict manager. I just had to raise my hand. When I think back on that program, I can see the purpose was to encourage students through effective communication to solve problems on their own and come to agreements about what they would like to see happen, rather than have a teacher or an adult tell them what to do. At this young age, we're learning about the importance of communication during conflict. At its core, mediation is just speaking and listening to one another. Sometimes you end up with an agreement, and sometimes you don't. Ultimately, the success of mediation depends on you and the other person with whom you'll be mediating. A recent custody exchange study found that 93% of divorcing couples tried an alternative dispute resolution method throughout the process of their divorce. Slightly more than half of those use mediation as the alternative method. The use of legal mediation is becoming more and more popular, with some states requiring it before finalizing a divorce, especially if there's kids involved. Mediation is proven to have many benefits over traditional litigation. It's cheaper, it's usually quicker, and it results in a more amicable co-parenting relationship moving forward. My local family court requires mediation for any co-parents before litigation if modification is wanted by either side. So the court says, before you bring your problem to us, try to figure it out on your own through mediation. I think the courts do this not only to free up their schedules from parties coming to court for every little disagreement, but I think they're also trying to teach parents that they are the ones qualified to make the best decisions for themselves and their families, and good communication is vital to getting that done. During mediation, just like anything else that we put time, money, and energy into, we want to walk away feeling that there was value to the service, that it was beneficial, and that we got something out of it. To increase the chance, there are things we can do on our end during our limited time with a mediator to be successful. If we want the highest chance for success in mediation, we have to go in knowing how to listen and how to speak effectively. When you listen effectively, you can respond effectively. As the other person is speaking, you should be actively listening to understand, not to respond or rebut. When you listen effectively, you will find that the other person in turn may listen to you. Defensiveness is reduced, and you might actually learn something. Effective speaking keeps the conversation focused and on topic, which lessens the chance of things escalating. Also, if you speak effectively, you're more persuasive and have a higher chance of getting what you want. By using specific communication tools, both with listening and speaking, parties can communicate more effectively during mediation. These tools will help keep the session focused and productive, increasing the chances of obtaining a successful outcome in a mediated agreement. I'm going to share with you my top 6 ways to communicate so that you can be the most successful in mediation. Number 1, don't interrupt. Interrupting the other person is not only rude, but it also has a significant impact on our ability to connect with the other party during conversation. It derails their train of thought and attempts to guide the conversation where we want it to go. By interrupting, we might miss out on a valid perspective that we hadn't considered before. Additionally, the other person is less likely to interrupt you when it's your turn to speak, and when people allow each other to speak without interruption, it leads to a quality communication and understanding. Not interrupting is not only beneficial to the other party, but it's also beneficial to us. When we allow ourselves a moment to pause and gather our thoughts before responding, it usually leads to more productive and intentional conversations. Lastly, by being quiet while other people are speaking, we create space for them to be heard and where we can learn something. Tip number 2, avoid assumptions. Avoid mind reading traps or assuming that we know what the other person thinks or feels or how they will react to something. By doing this, we deny the other person the chance to explain for themselves how they feel or what they think about something. Also, don't stop listening because you already know what they're going to say. Remember, this is not a reason to justify interrupting someone. While you don't want to convince yourself that you already know what the other party is thinking, you also don't want to assume that they know what you are thinking or feeling either. Tip number 3, ask clarifying questions and summarize their thoughts. Clarify or elaborate on what they're saying to indicate that you are listening and that you are interested. You can restate your interpretations of what they said back to them to gauge your understanding. Also, think of mediation as an opportunity to have repeat conversations. Maybe you've had a conversation a dozen times before, but this time you're in the presence of a trained neutral third party, and they really are there to help you promote understanding. So this is the perfect time to ask clarifying questions. These questions can also help you pull an issue from a topic. So for example, if two parents are discussing extracurricular activities for their daughter, and mom says, "No, I don't want her in dance." By asking clarifying questions, you may find out that there's more to it than mom not wanting her in dance. You may find out that the dance class runs late, which leads to a rushed evening when she gets back, which then in turn leads to a chaotic morning of trying to get ready for school because she stayed up too late trying to do homework and shower. So by asking those clarifying questions, it's not that mom didn't want daughter to do dance, it was an issue with the time. So we can maybe pull that out and maybe daughter has an opportunity to do dance. Last but not least, when you ask an open-ended question, allow the speaker to answer. So oftentimes we ask questions sort of as a way to state our own opinion and not truly to get a response. When you ask a clarifying question, take time and listen to the answer. So those first 3 tips were ways to communicate effectively through listening. The next 3 are going to be tips for speaking. So number 4 is use I statements. I feel, I think, I believe. I statements are how we phrase our personal thoughts and feelings, not stating things as fact, which can cause defensiveness. You made me feel places blame on the other person. When we use I statements, we take ownership and accountability for our feelings. And when we do that, the other person is more likely to be receptive and less defensive. An example would be, you make me feel overwhelmed when you're not here versus I feel overwhelmed when you're gone at night. So that's the difference. It kind of puts the ownership on us and takes the blame off the other person for our feelings. Because we, not others, are responsible for our feelings. They don't control how we feel. I statements also encourage ongoing dialogue, and you should always speak from your own perspective. Number 5, and this one is my favorite because I feel like mediations go bad quicker than anything else when people focus on the problem and not on the person. So no personal attacks, no name calling, and no labeling. It won't lead the other person to want to cooperate with you. It may lead them to shutting down, or you may have just started an argument. It creates a competitive approach and recycles arguments rather than a win-win compromising and collaborating approach, which is ideal for mediation. Focus on the task, not assigning blame or fault. So specifically in divorce and family mediations, you're there for a reason. Usually it's to come up with an agreed parenting plan or a settlement agreement for the division of assets. While that can certainly be emotional, try to focus on the task at hand, try to avoid triggers, and really keep in mind that you're there, the goal is to come up with an agreement. Don't use your time with the mediator to demonize the other party. Use it to discuss the issues and come to an agreement if possible. Number 6, the last tip, is focus on the future. Talk about your problems in terms of what you would like to see happen. Don't rehash or drag up old issues from the past. Make a firm commitment before entering mediation that you are going to move forward. So you're not there to dwell on past mistakes that you made or the other person made. Mediation is about deciding what you're going to do in the future, and communication should focus on what you want rather than arguing about what happened. So conflict is hard, but it's an inevitable part of our lives. Learning ways to be a more effective communicator can help. These 6 tips: don't interrupt, ask clarifying questions, avoid assumptions, use I statements, focus on the problem, not on the person, and face forward towards the future, can be used in mediation, can be used in elementary school conflict management programs, and in our daily lives. Thanks, that's all I've got.